All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here will be doing our preview and prediction for the Black Friday slate, along with the Egg Bowl going down on Thursday night. Kicking things off, Oklahoma, TCU on Fox at noon. A game Oklahoma has to have if they want a shot at, rematching Texas in the conference title game. Oklahoma, they were a 25-point favorite against BYU. Backup quarterback, and things didn't really go to plan there on the road for the Sooners, whose defense really hasn't continue to show that progression that we saw, early on in the season. 368 yards allowed. West Virginia, or 368 yards of offense, that is. Against West Virginia, they had, nearly 650, 492 in the loss to Oklahoma State. This passing attack has been great. Dylan Gabriel's been phenomenal this year. 3,200 yards, 27 touchdowns, another 11 rushing, 5 interceptions. The passing game has, relied on Drake Stoops, Jaleel Farouk, and Nick Anderson. These guys all have 600-plus yards, combined 18 touchdowns between Anderson and Stoops. Farouk has another 2. Of course, Andre Anthony was on pace for similar production before he got injured. His passing attack has been terrific, Nick. The TCU secondary hasn't been the most polished, despite, having good players like Josh Newton back there. They're only giving up, about a 59% completion rate. They give up plenty of yards, 240 through the air. Texas was able to put 300-plus up on them before, kind of shutting them down in the second half. Texas Tech had a nice field day. They bounced back here against Baylor recently. They also got demolished against Kansas State. So I think TCU in the secondary, they're going to have some issues here, Nick. This is a must-win for Oklahoma. Josh Hoover, like what he's able to do through the air, kind of impressed with some of his arm talent as a young freshman. 8 picks, though, this season in just a couple of games. That's certainly not great. Savion Williams, John Paul Richardson, Jared Wiley. I think this passing attack from TCU, they're going to have a little bit of success. I think the offensive line has some guys that can certainly hold up against the Sooners front. But I think Oklahoma's going to cover in this game. Again, it's a must-win. It's also senior day, and the passing attack just continues to be very stellar, led by Gabriel. So I think Oklahoma's going to get the job done here with ease.
I'm also going to take Oklahoma with the points. ESPN bet right now, laying them at 12.5 at home. I like this matchup a lot for Oklahoma on senior day. They can still have a berth at the Big 12 title game. They certainly want to get another chance to play Texas, a team they played earlier in the year and had some success against them and won that game. Dylan Gabriel is a fantastic quarterback who's really reinvented his career. He was, talked about as a stopgap quarterback in the start of the Venables era, but he's proven to be a lot bigger than that. A lot better than that than a stopgap quarterback. He's been very efficient for this team. 3,200 yards passing, 27 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Drake Stoops has really stepped up and been one of the most underrated wide receivers in the country in terms of pure talent and production. 755 yards receiving and 9 scores for Stoops. They've been able to run the ball as well at times, moving the ball on the ground. And like you said, the secondary has some talented pieces for TCU, but they've struggled in multiple games. They struggled even in game 1 against Colorado. So this is a big opportunity for Oklahoma to put up some nice points on the board. I do like what they have on offense at TCU. I think there are some talented players. Bailey at running back, 1,000 yards on the ground and 7 scores. Williams, their top receiver, 525 yards receiving and 4 scores. Hoover, 11 touchdowns, but the 8 picks is really what's weighing down his 1,800 yards passing so far this season. In limited appearances. I like Oklahoma in this one. I think this is a big opportunity for Venables and company to end the season on a high note, get to 10 wins in the regular season, and have a chance to compete in the Big 12 title game and potentially a New Year's Six Bowl. I like Oklahoma a lot in this one Friday afternoon.
Yeah, going into November, Oklahoma had one of the worst rushing attacks in terms of explosiveness. Gavin Sashwalk has really helped that out. 3 straight 100-yard games for him. Been a very effective runner. Over 6 yards per attempt over the last 3 games. Tyree Walker, of course, a more physical back, so they've certainly been getting production out of them. And then I think on defense, guys like Danny Stutzman, Ethan Dowds, Jared Kanik. These guys are going to explode, and they're going to make things hard for a young quarterback who's going to make some mistakes against the secondary that has, reeled in 18 interceptions this year, led by Billy Moman. Sooners will get it done. Iowa-Nebraska, obviously Nebraska, under Matt Rule, trying to finish the year on a high note. This is another game that's kind of traditional to have on this Black Friday. The Cornhuskers have been a very quiet team this year. They haven't exactly been awful, but they haven't been really good either. Still trying to knock on the door of bowl eligibility, and they got 5 wins, 3 straight losses, all coming by 1 score. So they've been right there, Nick, trying to get it done. The offense has been just awful, though. They've only hit over 400 yards once this season. The passing game, Hendon Harbaugh has not been great. Jeff Sims was the starter early on in the year, and of course, he ended up getting himself benched, even though he looked like he was going to be the guy for them. Harbaugh's their leading rusher, though, 477, 5 scores. Anthony Grant, he's also got 400-plus yards. This is the identity of their offense, $186 per game. This team averages exactly 18.7 points per game. That's exactly what they allow as well, Nick. This is a defense that's very sound. They got some nice strength on the interior. Nash Schlichmacher, Luke Ramir, Jamiri Butler at linebacker has been a pleasant surprise this year. Kevin Lenhart on the D-line. I mean, they got some ball players. Nick Henrik, another veteran linebacker. I think this is a defense that certainly ball. This is going to be a low-scoring game. Iowa, though, they just punched their ticket to the Big Ten title game. And, this is a program that plays with pride. 12.4 points per game allowed. They're just so good on this side of the ball. Joe Evans, Nick Jackson up front for them. Logan Lee, they're incredibly deep on their front seven. Jay Higgins, one of the nation's leading tacklers. Their top corner, of course, he's still banged up. Cooper DeJean. Nebraska's not really going to be able to expose that much. They still have veterans in the back end. Quinn Shuttle, Sebastian Castro. I think Iowa's going to get the job done here, Nick. I think they're looking at +1 right now. LaShawn Williams has been nice surprise for them at running back. Caleb Johnson had the game-winning touchdown against Illinois. They just really need to protect the football. Deacon Hill completing under 50%, 5 touchdowns, 5 picks. Just protect the football. They did have a long 14-play drive, and that's really what they do. Even if they're losing, I've seen it numerous times over the last couple of years where they're losing the entire game. They somehow put together a monster drive to finish it off and pick up the win. So I think they're going to do that again here, Nick. Low-scoring game. Iowa's offense is just absolutely abysmal. Nebraska's is just as bad, though.
Another week, another low over-under for Iowa and Nebraska. 27.5 the line is at right now for this game out there in Lincoln. I've said it for a very long time since I hired Matt Rule that Nebraska is the biggest sleeping giant in college football. If you plug the right coach in there, you could have success very quickly and be a very dominant team with recruiting and a great fan base. 5-6 right now, potentially get 6-6. I think 6-6 is a pretty great start if you're Matt Rule. I know it's been a bad last 3 weeks of bad losses at Michigan State, a bad loss at home to Maryland, and a bad loss on the road in OT this past weekend in Wisconsin, so disappointing. Meanwhile, Iowa, despite the fact they really cannot score points, they've won the last 3 weeks with some nice wins. They beat Northwestern, who's been a surprise, 10-7. They shut out Rutgers at home 22-0, and they beat Illinois 15-13 in an ugly game. This is an Iowa team, like I said, that punched their ticket to the Big Ten title game and will be competing in that game. They're 9-2, which is a pretty impressive mark considering this team cannot score points at all. And the offense, we don't have to talk about the offense with Iowa. It just does not exist. Interesting to see what happens when they make that change in the offseason with a new offensive coordinator, 18.5 points per game. They're only allowing 12.4 points per game, which is how they're winning these games, right? They hold these teams to basically no points. I am going to take them to beat Nebraska here. I'm thinking like a 14-10 type of score, something like that. Just a very low scoring affair for these two teams. I like this historic matchup. Nice, sort of rivalry game on Friday. I like Iowa to continue the momentum, get to 10 wins, and move on to the Big Ten title game where they're probably going to get smashed by either Michigan or Ohio State.
Yeah, 10 wins if they win on Friday, which is just mesmerizing considering it's not pretty, but they get it done, right? And that's exactly why they're happy with the current coaching staff. 5 wins in a row for Boston College. They're coming off 2 losses in a row. Got hammered against Virginia Tech at home. Just lost to Pittsburgh on the road, where a balanced attack during that win streak really led the way, and it certainly has faded out a little bit for this offense. Thomas Castellanos, he's been a pleasant surprise this year. Does have 11 picks, completing only 57%, 14 passing touchdowns at about 2,000 yards, 827 and 10 rushing. This has been a very impressive player, the UCF transfer, Nick. He's been a nice productive asset for this offense. Kyle Robichaud, 683 and 6 rushing touchdowns. They have a nice little 1-2 punch there. About 200 yards rushing per game for Boston College. Lewis Bond, Joseph Griffin have been reliable pass catchers this season. Bond leads them in everything. In the defense, they haven't been exactly great. 28 points per game allowed this year. Really struggled to get in the backfield. 34 tackles for loss, 12 sacks. Those are amongst the worst marks in the country. So Boston College doesn't get into the backfield much. Miami really disappointing me this year. They've certainly had plenty of bloopers really for this football team. Tyler Van Dyke took back over the quarterback position. He was playing with a lot of confidence, Nick. 327, a touchdown, no interceptions. He has a pick in every single game, it seems, and over the last 6 contests he was in, was able to protect the ball against Louisville. And I think he's going to continue to ride with that confidence. I love the receiving group he has of Restrepo, George, Colby Young. They all have 520-plus yards. They all have numerous touchdowns. This is a good receiving core. The run game led by Mark Fletcher, Henry Parrott. They both have 468 on the year and 4 touchdowns. Cheney also has 460-plus yards. They just don't always seem to be very efficient. I thought they did a pretty solid job against Louisville. Over the past month, though, they haven't been very sound at running the football. Miami's had struggles scoring points. The defense kind of let them down against the Cardinal here at home just a couple games ago. Last game, that is. 470 yards allowed there. Really stonewalled Florida State in the trenches. It's really hit or miss with this round attack. think Boston College will probably have some success here in the season finale running the ball. -9 for me. I think Miami's going to play hard, and I think they'll eventually get the cover. Boston College will not be easy to go away, though. A lot of talent for the Miami defense. Francisco Muaga, Robin Bain, Corey Flagg, some really good players. Branson Dean, Thomas Gore up front. Very good Miami defense that's kind of disappointed this year, and I think Boston College will have some success. I'll go ahead and take the Canes, though, to cover. Not all that confident in it, though.
Tale of two teams that have kind of fallen off and started to struggle. Miami lost three in a row, including an embarrassing loss at NC State. Looked good for most of the game against Florida State and looked good against Louisville, but dropped both those games. Meanwhile, BC, who were riding high after a nice win streak, got blown out by VT and did not look really competitive at all against Pitt on a weeknight game on the road. Both these teams are at 6-5. Both these teams want to get to that 7-win total. They're both going bowling at this point. But Miami, you expected more than just bowling. You expected to compete in the ACC, and that's not what happened. And a lot of that does come down to Van Dyke's mistakes. 2,400 yards passing, 17 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Just a gaudy number. Castellanos doesn't have much better of a stat in terms of to touchdown ratio. 14 touchdowns to 11 picks, nearly 2,000 yards passing. He's been great on the ground, though, as well. 827 yards and 10 scores. Been a real nice revelation on this offense up in Chestnut Hill. He's been exciting to watch, a very fun physical runner who's a pretty solid quarterback as well. Bond for them, their top wide receiver, 565 and 6 scores. Xavier Restrepo, the best wide receiver on Miami. Pure stats, 876 and 5 scores. Henry Paris Jr., 468 and 4 touchdowns. This running attack struggles at time for Miami. They really do struggle to find themselves on the pace and getting the ball done on the ground, which is really hampering this team back. I think they will struggle to run the ball against a pretty decent Boston College front defensive unit at times. I like the Hurricanes to win this one, though. I think they will cover the 8.5 points. They'll get the job done on the road, but you got to be disappointed if you're a Miami Hurricanes fan at this point. They let games slip away with the kneeling incident, other incidents like that. You got to be upset if you're a Miami fan at 7-5 to finish the regular season. You really expected more out of this Hurricanes team.
Also at noon, Toledo, their final game before the MAC title. Ohio Akron, and the Memphis Temple. If you're interested in some group of 5 play, look at the mid-afternoon slate on Friday. A big one here in the AAC, an eliminator between Tulane and UTSA. Winner will go to the conference title game to face SMU. This is a very interesting game, Nick. Tulane, they've played a lot of close games over the last couple of weeks. Only beat Tulsa by 2, ECU by 3, Rice by 2, a 1-score game with North Texas. It's been like this for a while now, and a lot of people probably don't want to see this Tulane team in the conference or in the New Year's Six hunt. That's where they're at right now. Only loss was to Ole Miss, where they really put up a resilient effort there. This is an offense led by veteran quarterback Michael Pratt, 69% completion rate, 2,000 yards, 23 total touchdowns. Certainly don't have the same ground attack they had last year with Tajay Spears. Mekhi Hughes, though, was a freshman, over 1,000 yards, 6 scores. Pratt has also been a very good runner for them. And, the balance of this offense is clearly evident. Lawrence Keys, 599 and 7 scores. They got 2 receivers over 500 yards this season. Their biggest problem, though, is they're not very good against the pass. 109th nationally defending the pass. And UTSA, this is a team that can air it out. Frank Harris, a veteran quarterback. He's got nice players in Dante Cephas, Tyke Oleg, Kellogg. They have, 966 yards, 514 respectively. Combined 6 touchdowns. Another 489 for Devin McCune. This is a nice passing attack. Pretty poor matchup for the secondary of the Green Wave. Cavari and Barnes has also been a respective runner. They can get the job done on the ground. They have 3 rushers with 400-plus yards. This is an explosive offense, Nick. Even after losing Zakaria Franklin, they've still been putting up great numbers. This is a tough game to call. 2.5 point line in favor of the Green Wave. Trey Moore, 17.5 TFL. Jamaria Robinson, Donnie Taylor. These are very good outside linebackers. The scheme is very clear for UTSA. They've always had these guys that can really collapse against the run. I think that's what's going to happen here. It's not going to be easy, and UTSA themselves isn't all that great against the run. I just think their explosiveness is going to be more, and I think their defense is going to make more plays, even though Tulane, they also have some ball players of their own. Devontae Deal, Patrick Jenkins, Darius Hodges. And these are veterans. They were here a season ago when they went out and beat USC for a Cotton Bowl victory. This is a very good Tulane football team, Nick. It's really hard to pick against them at home, but I think this is it's coming. You look at those results again over the last month. They've just not been all that great at separating themselves, and I think UTSA is going to expose that here. They're going to be the ones that get the job done, that knock them out in year 6 consideration.
This is certainly a game to watch on Friday, in my opinion. If you're going to pick a game to watch, I'd sit down and watch this one. 2 great Conference USA teams battling it out in New Orleans. A very fun, exciting matchup. These offenses are very interesting offenses. Look at this, the tail, in my opinion. UTSA has been phenomenal on offense the past couple weeks. They've won 5 in a row, 49 points, 34 points, 37, 41, and 36. Meanwhile, Tulane has been just skating by 24, 24, 13, 30, and 35. Those last three games you want to circle, right? Beating Tulsa by 2, 24, 22, beating ECU on the road 13, 10, and beating FAU on the road 24, 8 are very concerning numbers if you're a Tulane fan. I expect a similarly close, low-scoring game, which might be a bit shocking saying I'm going to expect a low-scoring game, but that's been how Tulane's been getting by. They continue to escape. They're dancing with danger right here. They continue to do so. This team wants to play in a Year 6 Bowl like they did last year, where they were able to show up and beat a team in USC that was a very talented national championship favorite team at the start of the year. Tulane went out and beat them in the Cotton Bowl. The Green Wave want to get the chance to do that again. I know the college football fan as a whole is probably not a big fan of this Tulane team, and I don't blame them, but I think this is a team that has a lot of talent on defense that's getting better and is a very talented offense. Pratt is a fantastic quarterback, 2,000 yards passing, 19 touchdowns, 4 picks. For him, for his part, Franco Harris is a fantastic quarterback as well, 2,300 yards, 17 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. A very balanced match. I think these two teams are extremely balanced on offense. I think they're balanced on defense as well. I'm going to take the home team in this one. I think Tulane will skate by in a close, low-scoring matchup, a bit of a fluky game. But Tulane, they're playing with fire here. They definitely have a loss coming soon. I'm not going to say it's against UTSA, but I could expect them to lose potentially in the Conference USA title game with the way that they're dancing with danger over here. A very exciting matchup, though, if you're a college football fan as a whole, because both these teams are playing and winning a lot of football as of late. They're 7-0 in the conference. A lot on the line in this game.
Now looking at Air Force Boise State in the Mountain West, one of the more underrated rivalries, or I don't even know if it's officially a rivalry, but over the last couple of years, at least 5 to 7 years, this game always seems to be close, always seems to be a lot on the line. Air Force right now, the wheels have fallen off. 3 in a row they've lost. Winner of this game, though, looks like they're going to play UNLV in the conference championship game. San Jose State is also 5-2, and I've not looked at tiebreakers or anything of that nature. And actually, now that I pull it up, win over San Jose State for Boise earlier this year. So this game will certainly decide a lot. Air Force, they have a great defense. PJ Ramsey, Bo Richard, these guys all have double-figure tackles for loss. The rushing attack, of course, led by Emmanuel Michel, Zach Lear at quarterback, John Lee Eldridge. Very productive rushing attack like it is year in, year out. 289 per game on the ground. And they put up 344 and 3 scores against UNLV. Week before that, though, they only had 201 and 155 in double-figure losses. Boise State, their ground game really came alive this past week, and that's really been dominant all year long. Austin Gianti was out a few games. He came back to get over 1,000 yards with 12 scores. George Haloni, he's been just phenomenal since his return from injury the last 4 games. He's up to 478, 5 touchdowns. 178 of that came on the ground against Utah State in a massive win. I love this game, Nick. We just talked about the one above being a must-watch. This one is as well. I think this is certainly a passing attack that has plenty of guys that can, pick up some ground deep. Eric McAllister, 18.5 yards per catch. Gianti, not only 1,000 yards rushing, second leading receiver, 419 yards, 4 touchdowns. Taylor Green's going to have to play a heck of a game here. So will the defense. They also have guys who get into the backfield. Andrew Simpson, Ahmad Hazine at defensive end. Boise State's going to win this game, Nick. 6-point favorites. I think they'll go ahead and get the job done with at least a touchdown edge. Air Force, they've just not been playing their best football as of late, losing 3 in a row. This is a great game, though. Again, the winner of this one, they both have beaten San Jose State, so they will be going on to the Mountain West Conference Championship game. I know Air Force wants that rematch with UNLV. They're coming up short at home. Taking Boise State to get it done. This will be a great one, though.
It's a very exciting matchup. This is a game that's been more than one more interesting games on rivalry week the past couple of years. Like you said, Boise State, they're 5-1 against Air Force over the last 6 years, but Air Force won the last game up in Boise 2 years ago in 2021. They won 24-17. I think it's important to note. This is a fun matchup. I like what I see out of this matchup a whole lot. It's an exciting game here. Air Force, I was high on them. They were having a lot of fun. I was a big fan of them. You said pump the brakes a little bit. They have fallen off. A bad loss versus Army, a bad loss at Hawaii, and they just lost a close game at UNLV where they were competitive in that game. I like what they have with their quarterback/running back and Lear. He's a fantastic kid to watch. Such a hard-working individual. 744 yards passing, 6 touchdowns, 2 interceptions on 62 attempts. Incredibly low numbers. Just kind of funny look at that. They're very great on the ground. They're a very physical running unit. If that running game is on point for Air Force, they're going to have a lot of success. I think they have a chance to get it on point against Boise State. The defense is also very smothering at times. They held teams under a lot of points. In certain situations, they're very good against the pass and good against the run as well. I think Green will make some mistakes. 8 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 1,300 yards passing for Green, the Boise State quarterback. I think they will take advantage of that, and Air Force will get a pick or two. I'm going to take the Falcons to win this game and get a chance to get that rematch with UNLV. I do like this Air Force team still, even though they've fallen off and New Year's 6 is not going to happen at this point. This is a fun team to watch. I like them to beat this Boise State team, who is not with a head coach at this point. Andy Alvos was fired just about a week or two ago. That was lost in the shuffle with the Jimbo Fisher news. A lot on the line here. I'm going to take the Falcons on the road in this one. I'm excited for this matchup, though.
Boise's lost 4 games this year by 1 score. Over the last month, their secondary has been pretty stout. Started the year on a pretty poor note. I'm going to take them to get it done, though. 6-point line's a lot, so maybe I'll reconsider that at the end of the week. Boise's also won the last 2 road games against Air Force. Whoever the home team is doesn't really seem to fare well. This is going to be a good one, though, in FS1. Arkansas and Missouri. Sam Pittman appears he'll be coming back for another season. It's been abysmal this year. I really thought Arkansas was a team that could certainly compete and be a contender in the West, and they've just been flat out awful. KJ Jefferson, 2,100 yards as a passer, 19 touchdowns, only 432 and 2 scores as a rusher. The run game has just been flat out pitiful. Raheem Sanders has been really beat up this year. Obviously, he's down there, 4th on the team in rushing. AJ Green, Rashad DeBinion thought they would be able to handle the load. Only $140 per game rushing for this team with KJ as the leader. In the passing game, it's been sound, I guess, solid, but really has not been explosive one bit. And the defense really hasn't taken the steps I kind of thought they would, even though some of the guys they picked up in the secondary I thought would make a difference, and they certainly have. They've still given up 21 touchdowns through the air, down to 211 yards per game, though. So I'm certainly happy that prediction paid off and was correct. But overall, just hasn't been great. Landon Jackson's really emerged. Trajan Jeffcoat, Chris Paul. Some of these guys, Lorando Johnson, some of the guys they picked up in the portal, Nick, I'm glad to see them produce and be good. Dwight McLaughlin, the guy they picked up 2 years back, he's got 3 interceptions. He's still one of the top corners in the country. This has just been an embarrassing team. They lost to 38 by Auburn, who just lost to New Mexico State. I mean, that's just the weirdest events you could hear if you're an Arkansas fan. The last loss before that was 7-3 to Miss State. And then the last loss before that was 3 to Alabama. I don't know what I'm reading. This is absurd. Arkansas has been just a flat-out pitiful team. I think Missouri's probably going to run away with this one. They certainly allowed Florida to hang in there more than they should have. Florida's been really feisty this year under Billy Napier. Game-winning field goal there by Mevis. I think Brady Cook and Luther Burden, this passing attack. I think they're certainly going to have plenty of success. I think you'll see that ideal balance here. Last home game of the year. Cody Schrader as well is going to have a big day. Certainly want to see this defense get back in tune, though, after kind of getting scorched by Florida for 500 yards. The balance was just ridiculous. I mean, they had a backup quarterback in there who was leading them on drives there in the 4th quarter. So defense needs to tighten up, Nick. I certainly think they will here. Darius Robinson, Johnny Walker have plenty of opportunities to tee off, while the very improved secondary of Chris Abrams, Drainee, Jalen Carlisle, these guys are going to have big days. I think this is going to be an easy cover for Missouri. But, man, Arkansas, what a chain of events when you lead off their results.
What a weird team. Certainly Arkansas wins the award for weirdest team in college football for me this year. Retaining Sam Pittman does not make a whole lot of sense to me. They were watching, they had Polar Express on at halftime when they were getting blown out by Auburn 2 weeks ago. That still has not rubbed me the right way. That doesn't make any sense that Pittman's returning, in my opinion. I just don't get it. I think it's just destined for mediocrity out there in Fayetteville. This team's been a mess this year. A 7-3 loss at home. Mississippi State is just a bad loss. Hung in with Alabama, doesn't make any sense. Got blown out by Auburn. Like I said, lost to Mexico State. Just all over the place. Arkansas make no sense. Their defense has not really stepped up like we thought they would. They've kept a couple of teams close, and they beat Florida. It's just been bizarre. This team doesn't make any sense. KJ Jefferson did not hit the heights that we thought he would in the preseason. He's struggled this year, in my opinion. 2,100 yards, 19 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, plus the 432 yards on the ground and 2 scores. He's your leading rusher. This rushing attack for Arkansas was supposed to be phenomenal this year. It just really has not been that as well. I know injuries have hampered them. This team's been a mess. It's just a complete disaster out there in Fayetteville. 1-6 in the conference. Just a total punt of a season. I really don't understand what's going on out there. I'm definitely taking Missouri in this one to win by a boatload. The Tigers 9-2 in the top 10 in the country. They skated by Florida, but outside of that, they looked good. They hung in with Georgia. They beat down on Tennessee, beat down on South Carolina, beat down on Kentucky. This is a very talented team. Cook is a fantastic quarterback. I love what I see out of him. 3,000 yards passing, 18 touchdowns, 6 picks. Schrader's been really coming alive the last couple of weeks. Fantastic running back, 1,200 yards on the ground, 12 scores. Luther Burden, the best wide receiver in the nation, in my opinion, at least the best wide receiver in the SEC. Such a talented player. 1,100 yards receiving, 8 touchdowns for him. Just a fantastic Missouri team. Their defense is cooking. They got a ton of turnovers against Tennessee. They got some turnovers against Florida as well. It's a very talented ball club. I like them to win this game on the road and finish the season 10-2. If you're a Missouri fan, 10-2 in the regular season plus a pretty nice bowl game appearance, I'd be pretty damn happy with that. That's a fantastic season. I like them plus the points pretty easily, in my opinion. I like this game a whole lot for Missouri.
4 o'clock on CBS. 5 losses this year for Arkansas by 1 score, so I guess there's a bit of a silver lining there. Looking at the nightcap on Black Friday, Texas hosting the Red Raiders. This is an interesting game as well because the Horns, they've not been great the last couple of weeks in terms of building up a resume. They were able to beat Iowa State by 10. I picked them to win exactly by 10. Picked them to lose the TCU. Almost blew that one. Almost blew the Kansas State game where I picked them to cover. Houston also blew that one almost. 31-24 finals. So Texas, since the Oklahoma game, this has not been really a dominant team, dominant team that is one bit. But I definitely think there's a good edge here, even without Jonathan Brooks. This is not a good run defense by Texas Tech. I like some of the players they have: Miles Cole, Jalen Hutchings, Steve Linton, Tony Bradford. I mean, there's some solid players on this side of the ball for Texas Tech, but it doesn't exactly result in much success, and Linton hasn't played in 3 weeks. And I think this is still a good ground attack led by C.J. Baxter, Jaden Blue. Obviously, the physicality of Brooks is going to be missed, especially, going forward in the postseason. They weren't great against Iowa State running the ball. I was kind of expected. The Cyclones are very tough against the run. Texas Tech is not going to be that strong here. Quinn Ewers in this passing attack, they certainly have some good explosiveness against Iowa State on the road. Their name 70% comp rate this year for Ewers, 280 yards per game, 16 touchdowns, 4 picks. Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell. I think these guys are going to have a big day overall. Texas, their offense has really sputtered for the most part, even with Ewers' return. They haven't been all that great. Just the consistency factor has really been low since that Oklahoma game. And I think you're probably going to see a little bit of that here. So I think Texas Tech will cover. The offense is going to put up a nice little effort led by a passing attack. They've been starting a few different guys this year. Brendan Morton seems to be the guy they're going to lean on, though. Only 12 touchdowns, 4 picks. The passing attack isn't as explosive, but they got guys like Miles Price, Duran Bradley, Xavier White, 3 players over 400 yards. I think they'll have some success overall. Take Texas Tech to cover. I'm looking at a 14-point line on the road. Just because Texas has been unable to complete 4 quarters of ball, it seems, this year, Nick. The offense has really struggled. The defense as well hasn't been the most polished late in games. So I'll take the Red Raiders to cover a game that's really odd, though.
This is certainly a game that's odd to have on this slate here. Texas, talk about a team skating by and trying to barely skate their way into the playoff. Just close game after close game. Barely escaped Kansas State, barely escaped Houston. TCU looked better on the road in Ames, but they still only won by 10 points. Very tough going for this Texas team. They've not been fantastic. Quinn Ewers still getting back to full health, so I certainly think that's what you can kind of talk about that a little bit. 2,500 yards passing, 16 touchdowns, 4 picks. Ewers, of course, returning Texas next year. A big get for the Longhorns as they join the SEC. That's a huge move in the future for this team, in my opinion. That's a big thing to have. Brooks has been solid on the ground for this team. Overall, this team is super talented. Xavier Worthy, a great wide receiver, 834 yards receiving and 4 touchdowns. This defense has been good over the past couple weeks, holding Iowa State to 16, TCU to 26, BYU to 6 points, Houston 24, Kansas State 30. I think the defense is good. They have good physical players, offensive line that get after the quarterback and make it a nightmare, which is why I'm going to take Texas to win this game and cover the points. I think that Texas Tech will just have no time to do anything with their quarterback, Morton. 1,400 yards passing, 12 scores, and 4 picks for him. Good running game for them with Brooks, their own Brooks running back, 1,300 yards on the ground and 9 scores for them. This Tech team has been getting hot as of late, won 6 in a row to get bowl eligible, 3 in a row, to get bowl eligible, including a win in the bowl eligibility bowl against UCF on Saturday. I like Texas in this one, but this game has had fireworks in the past when it has important ramifications, like that game in 2008, so it certainly is possible an upset could be brewing down there in Austin. Another thing I just want to quickly note, Tyler Show, the quarterback for Texas Tech, the backup, has entered the transfer portal. Just a quick note on Texas Tech. This is a fun matchup. I do like this game, but I'm going to take the Horns with the points.
Yeah, Shao should just retire at this point. Looking at Ford Field, Penn State, Michigan State, very awesome that they're doing that at the Detroit Lions facility on Black Friday on NBC. I think this is going to be a fun game to just chill and relax to. 20-point line in favor of the Nittany Lions. You've really been unable to score. They were really good against Maryland, struggled against Ohio State, Indiana, Michigan, Rutgers over the last couple of weeks. Defense has just been phenomenal, though. This has been a unit that's really held up their end of the bargain. Adiza Isaac, Chop Robinson, Curtis Jacobs, dynamic group in the front 7, Zane Duran as well. Some nice corners, Johnny Dixon, and guys like Kalen King. I mean, this is just a phenomenal unit for Penn State. Michigan State's still fighting, though. They're 2-1 in the last 3, lost by 35 to Ohio State on the road, beat Nebraska and Indiana by 3, Nick. And I think it's certainly important. They're certainly going out here. They're trying. They're not getting demolished on the ground. 3.8 yards per carry, about 1,500 yards allowed this year. That comes out to about $140 on the ground. So they're not getting embarrassed by any means in the run defense department. Aaron Brule, Jordan Hall, Cal Halliday, Simeon Barrow. These guys are playing hard, I think, on this side of the ball. The offense only about 17 points per contest. Caden Hauser had a pretty good game against Indiana. Nate Carter, he's really been the only player this year on the run game. So he's got 753, right? No one else on the team has 100 yards rushing That's embarrassing. That's far from what they had 2 years ago with Kenneth Walker, Mo Foster, Malik Carr. These are very good pass catchers. Both had big games against Indiana. I'm going to take Michigan State to cover, Nick. Again, I think they're playing very hard. I think they're going to do a good job slowing down the run. That's really Penn State's identity. They're not really doing anything on offense that convinces you they're going to come out here and just blow them out the water, right? So I think they'll do a pretty solid job. This game will be going by quick. Katron Allen, Nicholas Singleton, they're certainly going to have good games. They'll be efficient, and they'll, at the end of the day, have solid numbers. But I don't think Penn State's going to put up a massive amount on the ground here. I think we're going to have some long scoring drives. Michigan State will have enough success to get the points here at, which is kind of a de facto home game, I guess you could say, there in Detroit. I think this is a fun little game here, though.
I actually disagree with you. I think Penn State will cover the 20 points. I do like them to have a sort of blowout akin to how Michigan and Ohio State dismantled this Michigan State team earlier on in their matchups this season. Michigan State, total free fall. A poor season for this team. They did better than we thought, 4-7. I think it's better than most people expect, including a win at Indiana and a win at home against Nebraska 2 weeks ago. This game is fun at Ford Field. We talked about this in the preseason when they announced that this was a cool thing. Ford Field, they're getting a lot of work over this week. The Lions played on Sunday today. They play on Thanksgiving in the annual matchup against Green Bay, and then turn around and just a little over 24 hours later they host this game, Penn State between Michigan State. Credit to the Ford Field workers. They are working overtime there in Detroit. I like this matchup. It's a fun game. I'll be tuning into this game on the night slate. I think it's a really fun, unique matchup in this stadium. Drew Allure is a fantastic quarterback. Penn State hasn't been fantastic passing the ball the last couple weeks. They struggled against Michigan. They struggled against Ohio State. They struggled against Rutgers. But Allaire is still having a good season, 21 touchdowns to 1 interception, 2,000 yards passing. Katron Allen obviously is going to be the bell cow here and get a lot of the carries, 714 yards and 6 scores for him. I like Penn State to run the score up on the ground. The clock is going to be moving pretty fast here. I think they just have so much talent compared to this Michigan State team that it really is a bad talent matchup here. I like the Lions to get a ton of points, put a ton of points on the board, and win this game in convincing fashion. Get to 10-2, which is disappointing if you're a Penn State fan, but not bad, in my opinion, in the season for the Nittany Lions. A fun little way to end the season on Black Friday in Detroit.
And then to cap things off on Friday night, Oregon hosting Oregon State in the old Civil War. The Beavers, their defense looked very good against Washington. Their weather elements, though, were certainly involved in that. But I think they did a pretty good job overall. A lot of drops from Washington, though. It's just really hard to, offer an analysis that would be convincing with how bad the weather was. But one thing I do know is that Oregon State, they're a physical football team. They run the ball very well. They're very good off play action, big passing plays through the air. Cialis Bolden, Anthony Gold, Jack Velling, 8 touchdowns from his tight end position. Jimmy Martinez, Deshaun Fenwick, guys that, have a combined 1,600 yards and 14 touchdowns this year rushing. Talise Fuaga at right guard. Henry Bloomfield, Jake Levingood's back at center. Very good offensive line for Oregon State. I picked them to win this game a season ago. A lot of people thought that was crazy, and they ended up doing it with no passing attack one bit. They had less than 100 yards passing in that game. 60 to be exact, with 2 interceptions, 6 completions, Nick, and they still hung up 38 points on the Ducks. Dan Lenning and his group, they're well aware of that. And this is a team right now that's led by the Heisman favorite, Bo Nix. 35 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 5 more rushing, 78% comp rate, 3,500 yards. This is absurd, Nick. We're 11 games into the year, and the completion rating still has not dropped one bit. This is insane, coming off a phenomenal game. Back-to-back 400-yard efforts, really 3 400-yard efforts in a row. Just absolutely lighting up the stat sheet right now is Bo Nix. Love the ground attack, led by a 1,000-yard rusher, Bucky Irving. They're putting up about 200 yards on the ground themselves. Tess Johnson's really starting to light up the stat sheet, along with Troy Franklin. Very good Oregon State defense, though. Keaton Oladipo, Akil Arnold, some nice safeties. I definitely think that their cornerback positions, though, are certainly questionable. Ryan Cooper's pretty good in the slot. And, up front, they got ball players in Andrew Chatfield, Sione Lahia, Isaac Hodgins. They're very good in all aspects, Nick, on this defense. But Oregon's on a mission right now at home. They're probably angry from last year's game, how it went. They want to be in the playoffs. 14-point line. I hate to do it because I love the Beavers, and I even gave them a lot of credit last week. But I think they're absolutely going to get boat raced here. The Ducks are on a mission. They're not going to let up one bit.
This is a very important game for the playoff race. Oregon is certainly on a mission. This is a phenomenal team that has their eyes on the CFP. I think they're in a great spot for the CFP. I think right now they would be a great chance to beat Washington on neutral site. I would be taking Oregon in that matchup, a hypothetical matchup here. Oregon, why not them? They want to make the move. They want to be one of the big dance. They have a great resume, in my opinion. They've been just absolutely boat racing teams the past couple weeks, like you said, just dominating every single week. 10-1. This offense is just phenomenal. One of the prettiest offenses that I have seen in my life watching college football. Bo Nix, 35 touchdowns, 2 picks, 3,500 yards. He is so dialed in. He should win the Heisman at this point, in my opinion. Bucky Irving, 1,000 yards, 10 scores. Trey Franklin, 1,200 yards receiving, 13 touchdowns. Just the numbers are ridiculous. Every single stat is so positive for this Oregon team on offense, and their defense is not bad either. Arizona State scored 13 points, Utah scored 6, Cal 19, Wazoo 24. So they're a pretty solid defense. They're playing an Oregon State team that hung in with Washington, lost by 2 points to Washington, lost by 3 points to Arizona on the road. This is a very talented Beavers team. DJ Uiagalelei looks good at quarterback, 2,400 yards, 20 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Damian Martinez, a fantastic back, a great bell cow, 1,100 yards on the ground and 9 scores for him. Solid offense. I am going to take Oregon State to cover the spread. I think this game is going to be close because we saw last year that fluky things can happen in this game. This game is a very important rivalry game, Civil War. Oregon State's upset they're getting left behind in the Pac-12 with Oregon bouncing for the Big Ten, so I think they have a little bit of anger and angst there. At 11 in the country, this is a very solid Beavers team at 8-3. I'm going to take them to cover the spread. I think it's going to be like a 49-40 sort of shootout type of thing. I like Oregon to win this game and move on towards the Pac-12 title game, but I don't think Oregon State is going to make it easy for them at all. This is a very exciting must-watch television game.
Yeah, again, the Beavers are a really good football team. Oregon, though, they've been great against the run all year. Have not cracked one bit. They gave up 140-plus rushing first 2 games of the year. Texas Tech had a lot of QB run in that. And then since, the most they've allowed was 111 this past week against Arizona State. And a complete beatdown where they really just took their foot off the gas. They've been very good against the run this year. Jordan Birch, Brandon Dorless. They've had no problems with these linebackers, Jamal Hill. And then, Jeffrey Bassett converting from the secondary. They also have a very good secondary as well. So I think Oregon right here, they're going to lock their title up in the Pac-12 title game. Very good football team there. And, of course, to cap things off, the Egg Bowl on Thursday night. Mississippi State hosting Ole Miss. Ole Miss is just a weird team, Nick. I really hate betting on them. I don't think anyone really cares to. They had a good first drive against Georgia. That was about it. And then, they had 7 points at half here against ULM. They had 3 touchdown drives after that. Ended up winning the game by 32 points. The rushing attack, though, they still have not cleared 200 yards over the last 4 games, even though Quinshon Judkins is still putting up some nice production, 14 scores, knocking on the door of 1,000 yards. 4.4 yards per attempt. I think this is certainly a good part of their offense, but certainly not as explosive as we kind of expect. 3 receivers over 700 yards, and Watkins, Dayton Wade, Trey Harris, Jackson Dart certainly has a lot of inconsistencies, but he's still having a good year. 2,900 yards, 19 touchdowns, 5 picks. Mississippi State, they just fired Zach Arnett. They were able to pick off a win against Southern Miss, 41-20 after 3 straight conference losses by double figures. Will Rogers, 200 yards per game, 12 touchdowns, 4 picks. He's really protected the ball to a solid tune before, missing 4 straight games. He did return against Southern Miss. I think he's going to be playing in this game as well. Jaquavius March, figured he'd have a pretty solid season, 534, 4 touchdowns in the 8 games he played. Pretty solid numbers. He also missed the last 3 games. So they had a lot of guys that are beat up for these SEC contests. Nick, Laderick Griffin, Xavier Thomas, some nice, respectable receivers. On the defensive side of the ball, though, they have some great linebackers in Jet Johnson, Nathaniel Watson. Sean Preston's a beast of a safety. Jaden Crometti, a defensive tackle. There's a lot of seniors on this team, Nick. This is going to mean a lot to them. Obviously, they're still going to be very emotional with the whole, Mike Leach passing. That's still going to be fresh in your minds here on senior day because this is the guy that should be here coaching you in your final game at Mississippi State. Mississippi State will cover in this game. I definitely think they could win it outright. I just think the offense is not powerful enough to keep up, in the second half with Ole Miss. But they will cover in this game. The Rebels are certainly going to have some of their struggles. The Egg Bowl has not been as great over the past couple of years. I think we're going to have a good one here, though, on Thursday night.
Mike Leach's final win in his storied career before his passing was the Egg Bowl last year on the road in Oxford. State won 24-22. Prior to that, Ole Miss won the last 2 matchups. This game moved to Thanksgiving. I like that move when they moved to Thanksgiving. I think it's a fun thing. You watch the NFL games in the early afternoon. You watch some college basketball maybe after dinner. Then you sit down, tucker in for the Egg Bowl on ESPN, a great historic rivalry. 2 schools that absolutely hate each other in the state of Mississippi, where football means everything for these schools. An exciting matchup here. Ole Miss, they got a lot to play for here because they think they can still be competing for a New Year's Six Bowl. And Ole Miss with Kiffin, that's what they want. They want to get a New Year's Six Bowl. They consider that a successful season. 10 wins would be successful if you're Ole Miss, considering the talent they have. I think a New Year's Six Bowl is impressive if Ole Miss can get there, and this is an opportunity to do so. Jackson Dart's a fantastic quarterback. Looks good this season, 2,900 yards passing, almost 19 touchdowns, 5 picks, great in the ground as well. Quinshon Judkins, nearly 1,000 yards rushing, 14 scores. Harris, a fantastic wide receiver, 824 yards and 8 scores. They got boat raced by UGA, which was disappointing, but outside of that, they won a bunch of their games. They lost a close one in Tuscaloosa, so their 2 losses came on the road to the 2 best teams, the SEC, and 2 of the 5 best teams in the country, so you really can't totally knock them too bad there. Mississippi State, they fired Arnett. That was a tough spot for him to be in. Now they try to change directions and get somebody in there. I am going to take Ole Miss with the points. I think they will win by about 15, something like that. Get the job done on the road. The State has struggled in this rivalry at home. They've struggled in this rivalry period. They get a win here and there, but this State team just is not very good. 5-6 overall, 1-6 in the conference, getting blown out by A&M, Kentucky, and Auburn in their last conference games. I like Ole Miss to win this one on Thanksgiving night, get a win for Kiffin, get him to 10 wins, and push on towards potentially a New Year's Six bowl or at least a high-value bowl. This Rebels team, if I'm a Rebels fan, I'm happy with 10-2 in the regular season. I think it's a pretty solid season, but maybe they expect more out of Kiffin. This is a fun Thanksgiving matchup. Expect a high-scoring affair with Rodgers back at quarterback for State. Should be a fun way to end the evening.
Yeah, I mean, 5 wins is even further ammunition for me to want to back them here in this game of bowl eligibility on the cusp. Jared Ivey, J.J. McKee, some nice defensive ends or defensive linemen, that is, for Ole Miss. I thought they would be better against Georgia, and they got absolutely demolished, 300 rushing in that one. And they also were gashed against Texas A&M on this side of the ball. So the defense certainly not really living up to what I thought. And the offense has not really had that ability this year to kind of pull away in games. I mean, they outlasted LSU. Congratulations. But they weren't very good against Arkansas or Auburn in terms of scoring points. And I think here, big opportunity to back Mississippi State. They're certainly going to cover in this game. Not sure if they'll win. I wouldn't be shocked one bit, though. That's going to be it for today's episode, Nick. Appreciate you joining me. This is a great slate here of Black Friday games. Even, if you're just an average college football fan, Mountain West will be decided, AAC will be decided, and like you said, a potential New Year's Six bid for teams like Oregon State and Ole Miss.
Certainly a lot of football to watch this weekend. This Friday slate is a great way to set you up the Thursday game as well. Great way to set you up for a really powerful Saturday with playoff implications, some fun matchups, some games that don't really get the national spotlight normally, that are getting some teams that don't really play on national television a whole lot, getting a chance to play and be the teams that get the spotlight. A lot of people aren't working on Black Friday. They can sit back, relax, enjoy this game, enjoy this day of games. Some great matchups here. UTSA-Tulane, Missouri, Arkansas, some fun ones. Texas Tech, Oregon State, Oregon, all great games to watch. I'm super excited for this slate.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.